Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I am Deepika Mehto, coming up in the next 1 hour. Saudi Arabia set to host extraordinary Joint Islamic-Arab Summit in Riyadh on Saturday. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu thanked the soldiers for their contribution to nation's security. Israel revises down the 7th of October Hamas attack death toll to 1,200 now. Around 1.6 million people affected by floods in Somalia and neighboring countries in East Africa. United Nations describes it as a once-in-a-century event. And double-header day today at ICC Men's Cricket World Cup. Australia takes on Bangladesh, and in second match of the day, England to face Pakistan. Saudi Arabia is hosting an extraordinary Joint Islamic-Arab Summit in Riyadh today. Arab leaders, including Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, is expected to attend the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Summit in Riyadh. The Gaza crisis will be discussed during the summit. According to the statement of the Saudi Foreign Ministry issued on Friday, the Joint Islamic-Arab Summit comes in response to the exceptional circumstances taking place in Gaza. Israel's foreign ministry says the death toll from the 7th of October attack by Hamas has been revised. Now, the new official figure stands at around 1,200, down from the earlier estimate of 1,400. The ministry also said that the new count was not a final number and might change and also identify all the bodies. The updated figure comes more than 1 month after Hamas gunmen carried out an attack on towns and military bases in southern Israel. It included the killings of Israeli civilians, including women and children, in residential areas and at a music festival as well. Israeli authorities also say that Hamas also took more than 240 people captive during the attack, including Israeli soldiers and civilians, as well as people from numerous foreign countries. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to French President Emmanuel Macron's call for Israel to stop attacking the civilians in Gaza. Netanyahu said that Hamas is responsible for those deaths and not Israel. Netanyahu further said that Israel is doing everything possible to avoid harming Gazan civilians, whereas Hamas is doing everything to prevent them from leaving for safe zones. Israeli Prime Minister further added that Hamas is cruelly holding Israeli hostages, women, children and the elderly in a crime against humanity and uses schools, mosques and hospitals as terror command centers. Moreover, he said that today Hamas is committing crimes in Gaza. Tomorrow it will spread such attacks in other nations as well. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a visit to an army base at the Gaza border. Netanyahu there praised the soldiers for contributing to the safety and security of Israel. He also joined them for Sabbath service. Washington says President Joe Biden will meet his Chinese counterpart, President Xi Jinping, on Wednesday in San Francisco. The meeting has been long anticipated, but only just confirmed. DD India's Andrew Wood reports from Hong Kong.
This has been a long time coming. I mean, there'd been an expected meeting, or people have been talking about an expected meeting for weeks, but no one had actually pinned down a particular date until now. I think if you look at it from the Chinese side, what they want is, they've said in the past, when there were the idea of a meeting with, between Mr. Xi and Mr. Biden was mooted, that the Americans would have to be sincere. And they've said that a lot during the meetings or during the trips of senior American politicians since June, started with Antony Blinken, the American Foreign Minister, the Secretary of State, visiting Beijing. they've been saying that whenever Americans come, that they want America to be sincere. And I think this means basically that Beijing wants America probably to make some concessions to look good for President Xi. Obviously, China probably has to make some concessions itself in order that President Biden can go back to the White House and say, look, this summit has been worth it. And remember, it's the first time the two men have met for more than a year, and in that year, an awful lot of bad things happened to China's relationship with the United States and vice versa. Remember the spy balloon, the supposed spy balloon that flew through American airspace back in February, that America actually then shot down, which China always said was a scientific balloon. And then there's been more and more, there have been more and more incidents in the South China Sea, where some of America's allies, like the Philippines especially, have been prevented or certainly made it life more difficult for them to supply bits or atolls in the South China Sea that Philippines says belongs to them, and the Chinese say belong to them.
United States President Joe Biden's re-election campaign has officially filed paperwork for the South Carolina Democratic primary. Vice President Kamala Harris on Friday made a surprise visit to the Palmetto state to hand Biden's registration papers to the state's Democratic chairperson and also thank the officials for helping her and Biden get to the White House 4 years ago.
And so to be here today and to just for a moment appreciate this moment in the context of history, first in the nation, and then putting it in the context of what happened in 2020, when it was South Carolina that created the path to the White House for Joe Biden and me. South Carolina, who understood and believed in the promise of America and the importance of, with optimism, fueled by a sense of hope and understanding of what is possible, then fought for our democracy and for right of all people to participate.
In a major setback for former U.S. President Donald Trump, Judge Aileen Cannon refused to delay the former president's trial in the documents case till after the 2024 presidential elections, and it will still have the trial in May next year. Trump's indictment in the case alleging mishandling of classified documents has loomed over his candidature. The Republican frontrunner has pushed repeatedly to move this federal criminal trial and others past the November 2024 presidential election, citing how busy he and his lawyers' schedules are and his demands on the campaign trail and the complexities of the cases. U.S. House of Representatives Republicans aim to release a stopgap measure to avert a partial government shutdown on Saturday, the morning after the Moody's credit agency lowered its outlook on the government's credit ratings to negative. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson has spent days in talks with members of a slim 221 to 212 Republican majority about several CR options. The Republican-controlled House and Democratic-led Senate must agree on a vehicle that President Joe Biden can sign into law before current funding that expires on the 17th of November. Moody's cited political polarization in Congress as a factor in making its decision to lower the credit outlook, saying Washington may not be able to reach an agreement to make its growing deficits more affordable. The U.S. recorded a $1.7 trillion deficit last year, which is the largest outside of the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and rising interest rates that mean that the cost of the servicing that debt will continue to grow. Now, just a few months ago, Congress brought the U.S. to the brink of defaulting on its more than $31 trillion in debt, a move that would have shaken world financial markets. Democratic U.S. Senator Joe Manchin, a maverick who has often bucked party leadership in the past 2 years, said he will not seek re-elections in the upcoming year, greatly hurting his party's chances of holding the West Virginia seat. The move by the 76-year-old lawmaker will imperil Democrats' narrow 51-49 majority. Republicans hold the governor's office and the rest of the congressional delegation in a state that Republican Donald Trump won by a wide 69-30% margin over Democrat Joe Biden in 2020 presidential election. Manchin, who took the office back in the year 2010, has been a key vote on every major piece of legislation of President Biden's tenure as a moderate representing an increasingly conservative state. Now, his support was critical to the passage of Biden's sweeping $1 trillion infrastructure law, which is one of the president's key domestic accomplishments. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said on Friday that she and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng agreed to intensify communication on economic issues, but also warned him to crack down on Chinese companies that supply material support to Russia for its war in Ukraine. Yellen said she raised the issue during 2 days of meetings with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng, expressing concerns that equipment helpful to Russia's military was evading sanctions and getting to Moscow to aid its war against Ukraine.
We do see evidence that there are Chinese firms, and I'm certainly not saying with the knowledge of the Chinese government, but some Chinese private firms that may be aiding in the flow of this equipment and material to Russia, as well as some financial institutions that could be involved in facilitating that flow. So I stressed in our conversations that it's critical to us that companies not provide material support for Russia's defense industrial sector, and that we were prepared to put in place further sanctions.
Dozens of migrants crossed the U.S. from Mexico on Friday through the open edge of the border wall in California. For months now, makeshift camp has seen migrants pass by the eastern San Diego desert due to extreme weather conditions. U.S. border officials have released thousands of migrants on streets in the San Diego area in October, including about 1,400 in the beach town of Oceanside. U.S. border officers picked up more than 204,000 migrants in the San Diego sector alone in the last 11 months. We are moving for a short break right now, but still to come on DD India News Hour. Russian artillery and drone attacks on Friday killed 3 people and damaged an unspecified infrastructure facility. The German parliament on Friday approves implementation of a global minimum corporate tax. Floods hit Somalia. Thousands have been displaced in Somalia and neighboring countries in East Africa.
Always welcoming. The vibe of Punjab is larger than life. Warm up to grandeur that's beyond compare. And history that's dotted with tales of bravery. Smiling soul of India, where music, art, cuisine and culture comes together to create an unforgettable impression. Punjab is all set to win your hearts with its unique and colorful extravaganza.
Welcome back after that short break. You are watching DD India News Hour with me, Deepika. Well, Ukrainian naval drones attacked and sank two small Russian landing ships in Crimea, Ukraine's military intelligence agency confirmed on Friday. The attacks had been carried out by naval drones on the two vessels in Vuska Bay on the west side of the peninsula. It identified one landing craft as an Akula-class vessel, the other as a Sorna class. The Ukrainian military said the vessels were crewed and loaded with armored vehicles. Ukraine says some Russian Navy vessels have relocated from Sevastopol following the recent attacks. Russian artillery and drone attacks on Friday killed at least 3 people and damaged an unspecified infrastructure facility, power lines and a gas pipeline in Ukraine's south. Both the regions have come under regular shelling by Russian troops in occupied territory on the eastern bank of the Dnipro River. An infrastructure facility, a gas pipeline and power lines, as well as 11 private houses had been damaged. Russia's defense ministry said on Friday that it thwarted Ukrainian attempt to forge bridgehead on River Dnipro's east bank and on nearby islands, killing around 500 Ukrainian soldiers in the past week.
On November 9, personnel from a motorized rifle company in the Russian military grouping Dnipro, under the command of Senior Lieutenant Zolto Arsenalov, destroyed servicemen from a unit of Ukraine's 36th Marine Infantry Brigade as they were trying to gain a foothold on the left bank of the Dnipro River.
Russian anti-aircraft units downed 2 Ukrainian drones in the early hours on Saturday. Russia's defense ministry says the drones were hit over the Moscow region and Smolensk region to the west near the border with Belarus. The International Monetary Fund reached a staff-level agreement with Ukraine on updated economic and financial policies, paving the way for a $900 million disbursement from its $15.6 billion lending program once approved by the board. IMF said Ukraine met all quantitative performance criteria set for the end of June and indicative targets for the end of September. The IMF said the Ukrainian economy continued to show remarkable resilience despite Russia's attack that took place back in the year 2022 in the month of February, and also recent economic developments point towards a stronger than expected economic recovery this year. A European Union plan to spend up to 20 billion euros on military aid for Ukraine that is meeting for resistance from European Union countries and may not survive in its current form, as the diplomats say. As European Union defense ministers prepare to discuss the plan in Brussels on Tuesday, diplomats say multiple countries, including EU heavyweight Germany, have voiced reservations about committing such large sums years in advance. The debate over military aid comes as European Union nations are also in discussions over a proposal to give Ukraine 50 billion euros in economic assistance. Moving on, the German parliament on Friday approved the implementation of a global minimum corporate tax as part of an international deal to ensure large companies pay at least a minimum tax rate of 15%. Multinational firms will have to pay that level of tax on all of the profits they make worldwide, regardless of where the profits are generated. In the year 2021, almost 140 countries agreed to an organization for an economic cooperation and development deal that they are meant to implement from next year to prevent big companies like Alphabet's Google or Amazon avoiding taxation by transferring profits to low-tax countries. Thousands have been displaced in Somalia and neighboring countries in East Africa following a historic drought. The United Nations released aid of $25 million and described it as a once-in-a-century event. Now, around 1.6 million people in Somalia could be affected by the heavy seasonal downpours, which the United Nations say have worsened by the combined impact of El Nino and Indian Ocean dipole. The floods, which followed heavy rains that started in early October, have already killed at least 29 people and forced more than 300,000 from their homes in Somalia and parts of Kenya. Northern French farmers expressed worries after persistent flooding in the region this week led to losses in their crops and livestock. Days of heavy rains in the northern French departments have caused local rivers to overflow and flood houses, prompting the evacuation of residents as over 100 towns are on a red alert. The Weather Bureau have put many regions to remain in red alert for flooding, whereas the French authorities have said that dozens of towns to be considered in a situation of natural disaster. European Space Agency's chief Joseph Aschebar warns that the melting of polar ice caps and glaciers is very critical. He was speaking on the sidelines of the One Planet Polar Summit on the situation in the poles. The agency chief called on political leaders to recognize the importance of climate change. The summit was attended by delegates from 40 polar and glacial nations in Paris.
The situation at the poles is very critical. We have, of course, we see with our satellites day and night how big the melting of the polar regions is, but also what is the impact on sea level rise. We have some of the most accurate satellite measurements to see how the sea level is rising due to melting of polar regions, glaciers, and so on. Climate is still the biggest crisis to deal with. It needs all the effort from everyone. Of course, the political leaders need to make the decisions.
And now in DD India News Hour, let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has vowed to build up defense capabilities in response to an increasingly severe regional security environment. Kishida talked about increasing threats from Russia and China and also vows to secure the necessary budget for it. Britain's King Charles will appear on the cover of the magazine called Big Issue on his 75th birthday. The magazine is sold by homeless and vulnerable people. Charles has also authored an article for the magazine about the importance of finding ways to bridge the gap between food waste and food need. FBI agent seizes electronic devices from New York City Mayor Eric Adams earlier this week. The move comes after a raid on the home of his chief campaign fundraiser. Federal authority is conducting an investigation into whether his 2021 mayoral campaign conspired with a Brooklyn construction company and Turkish government to funnel foreign money into the campaign. The electric sports car developer and manufacturer Rimac is racing forwards by going backwards. The Croatian manufacturer is set for a new record for an electric car, with a Nivera reaching a top speed of 171 miles per hour in reverse. The car now officially holds the Guinness World Records title for the fastest speed in reverse. We are moving for a short break, but still to come on DD India News Hour. UK's latest official GDP figure says country not in recession. North Korea's foreign ministry on Saturday slammed US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. And the song Abundance in Millets, featuring Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has been nominated in the Best Global Music Performance category at the 2024 Grammy Awards.
Welcome to a happy place. To nature's warm embrace. Witness the power of faith, fruits of hard work, and protectors of Mother Earth. Unique in every way. Discover something new every day. A small state with big ambitions. And a bigger heart. Mizoram welcomes to love, laughter, and celebrations.
Welcome to Lakshadweep, the land of 100,000 islands. The aquatic wonderland of India, an archipelago of spectacular marine gems, colorful coral and crystal clear lagoons. A kaleidoscope of turquoise blue. Each island of Lakshadweep draws in explorers with its unique beauty. Witness idyllic sunsets and pristine beaches of Kavarati. The majestic lighthouse and colorful boat races at Minikoi. Experience water sports in the shallow lagoons of Kadmat. Unwind in the serene setting of Bangaram. Lakshadweep offers a precious heritage of ecology and culture, with rhythmic beats of folk dances echoing through these islands, delighting visitors in traditional folk dances and local artworks with abundant marine life and mineral resources. The islands are advancing towards a greener, brighter future. Lakshadweep is set to amaze visitors with its breathtaking wonders and picturesque seascapes. In the enduring spirit of incredible India.
Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India News Hour with me, Deepika. Let's quickly take a recap of the top headlines. Saudi Arabia set to host extraordinary Joint Islamic-Arab Summit in Riyadh on Saturday. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu thanks the soldiers for their contribution to nation security. Israel revises down October 7 Hamas attack death toll to 1,200. Around 1.6 million people affected by floods in Somalia and neighboring countries in East Africa. United Nations describes it as a once-in-a-century event. The United Kingdom economy is stagnating but is not in recession, according to the country's latest official GDP figures. There had been widespread expectation that the UK would have entered recession in the third quarter of the year. DD India correspondent Stuart Smith reports.
This latest data means the value of goods and services produced by the UK barely changed from July to September at 0.0%. Imports were down in the third quarter, reflecting a lack of domestic spending, according to the Office for National Statistics. It says a small drop in the services sector and health and commercial property rentals was partially offset by small gains in the engineering, car sales and machinery leasing sectors. Some economists point to Bank of England monetary policy as the most relevant factor, with high interest rates successfully reducing inflation but also stifling growth. The New Economics Foundation blames institutional factors like a lack of investment in healthcare, resulting in people being too sick to work, and blaming high energy bills due to underinvestment in home insulation and alternative energy sources. The lack of growth is widely expected to continue into 2024, hovering around 0%, with the jury out on whether minimal growth or minimal recession is more likely over the next few months. Since just before the COVID pandemic, UK GDP has grown 1.8%, which puts it ahead of France, Germany and Japan, but means it's less productive than Italy and Canada. The US stands out amongst G7 nations, having grown 8% since before the pandemic. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, who is responsible for government spending, says his new budget, to be announced the week after next, will focus on unlocking investment, getting people back into work and reforming public services to improve growth. The opposition Labour Party says the figures are further evidence the economy's not working under the Conservatives and working people are worse off. Stuart Smith in London, reporting for DD India.
Pressure is growing on British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to fire his Interior Minister after comments that she made about the police. Home Secretary Suella Braverman wrote a newspaper article suggesting London's police force is biased in its handling of pro-Palestinian marches. DD India correspondent Juliet Chapman reports from London.
As protesters take to the street on Saturday, the police response is being watched very closely. Almost 2,000 officers will be present in London as protesters call for civilians in Gaza to be protected at the same time as ceremonies are held to mark Remembrance Day. There had been calls to ban this week's demonstration because of the day that it falls on. London's police force says there were no grounds to ban the march. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said he believes holding it on a day of remembrance is disrespectful. But after meeting the head of the Metropolitan Police, he acknowledged the right to peacefully protest. His Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, seems to have a different view. In an article in the Times newspaper, she accused the police of showing favoritism towards certain protest groups. It later transpired that the article had not been approved by the Prime Minister's office. That has led to accusations that Braverman has undermined Rishi Sunak's authority. Downing Street says there is an internal process going on to establish how the article came to be published. But a spokesperson says the Prime Minister has full confidence in his Home Secretary. Other cabinet ministers have distanced themselves from her comments, which some have accused of impinging on the independence of law enforcement. The Metropolitan Police says continued protest and rising hate crimes are causing fear and anxiety among London's Jewish communities, who it said had a right to feel safe. The force says it will do everything it can to ensure Remembrance Day events are not disrupted. Julia Chapman in London, reporting for DD India.
In Spain, protesters set off flares in Madrid on Friday as acting Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez set for a new term. A day after securing the backing of Catalan separatist party Junts, Sánchez secured the backing of Basque Nationalist Party. The more complicated deal was the one secured on Thursday with the party. The deal included a law granting amnesty to those prosecuted over Catalonia's attempt to secede from Spain, accusing Sánchez of putting the rule of law at risk. The support of the party and PNV takes Sánchez over the line with an outright majority in the 350-member lower house in a vote due to take place in the coming days. North Korea's foreign ministry on Saturday slammed U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's comments on Pyongyang's relations with Moscow, saying the remarks would only escalate the dangerous political and military tension on the peninsula. Blinken was in Seoul earlier this week after attending a G7 foreign ministers meeting in Japan. He met with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and other top officials as well. Now, during his visit to the South Korean capital, Blinken said military ties between Pyongyang and Moscow were growing and dangerous, and they urged Beijing, Pyongyang's main ally, to restrain the nuclear-armed North. Pyongyang on Saturday condemned Blinken and said his comments were irresponsible and provocative. Now, a song on millets featuring Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi gets nominated for the Grammy Award 2024 edition. The song, composed and sung by Grammy winner Falguni Shah and Gaurav Shah, was launched to boost awareness about the importance of millets. The Prime Minister featured in the song on speaking about the importance of adopting millets as part of the lifestyle. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had also praised the video of the song on social media platform X.
So much that we can gain.
Now, Pakistan has been asked by the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, to ensure strict implementation of anti-money laundering laws. The Federal Board of Revenue and the State Bank of Pakistan officials briefed the IMF regarding anti-money laundering and suspicious bank transactions during talks in Islamabad for the next review for the delivery of $700 million loan tranche. The sources said that the SBP briefed the international lender on Pakistan's economic performance from July till March, while the FBR officials briefed the visiting delegations about tax crimes and also presented a report to them. An Islamabad Accountability Court on Friday ordered authorities to unfreeze former Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's properties in the Toshakhana reference case. National Accountability Bureau judge issued the said order on the application of the PMLN Supremo, requesting the court to unfreeze his properties attached by the provincial government of Punjab after he was declared a proclaimed offender in the Toshakhana case. The Accountability Court in Islamabad back in the year 2020 ordered the forfeiting of assets and properties of former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif in the Toshakhana reference. The International Rescue Committee, or the IRC, in Afghanistan has expressed deep concerns about the survival of Afghan refugees arriving from Pakistan. Tens of thousands of Afghans, many of whom have lived in Pakistan for decades, have had to leave the country. Pakistan says that its move to expel undocumented Afghans is a response to the unwillingness of the Taliban-led administration to act against the militants, using them to carry out attacks in Pakistan. Taliban has so far denied the accusations. The 8th Ayurveda Day was observed at the Sri Lanka Foundation in Colombo. The event was attended by the Deputy High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Dr. Satyanjal Pandey, and the Secretary of Sri Lanka's Ministry of Health, S. Janaka, Sri Chandragupta. On the occasion, an eminent Ayurveda proponent, Professor Emeritus H.A.S. Aryavansa, was also felicitated for his contribution to Ayurveda. Speaking at the event, Dr. Satyanjal Pandey said that Ayurveda is a part of the common heritage shared between India and Sri Lanka and has helped people to lead a long, healthy and balanced life.
The cooperation between India and Sri Lanka on Ayurveda and indigenous sciences is not new. Ayurveda, read as indigenous medicine, is a part of our common heritage of India and Sri Lanka. Ayurveda is a science commended by many scholars, is to be the oldest, with ranging over 5,000 years. It prescribes a holistic approach to health designed to help people to live long, healthy, balanced life.
Adding to the glory of Ayurveda, Sri Lanka's Health Secretary S.J.S. Chandragupta said that Ayurveda has a wider scope than medical practice in ensuring public and environmental health.
Ayurveda is one of the most ancient and holistic approaches of medicine globally. Ayurveda is not just a medical practice. It has a wider scope and covers various aspects of public and environmental health too.
Back home, India and the United States held their 5th India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue in New Delhi on Friday. The ministers reviewed progress being made in cross-cutting aspects of defense and security cooperation, technology value chain collaborations, and people-to-people ties. The meeting also highlighted the importance of strengthening partnership through Quad to promote a free and open as well as prosperous, secure and resilient Indo-Pacific.
Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar met their counterparts from the United States government, Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin and Secretary of State Antony Blinken for the 5th 2+2 ministerial dialogue held in New Delhi on Friday.
The India-US bilateral relationship has seen a growing convergence of strategic interests and enhanced defence, security and intelligence cooperation. Defence remains one of the most important pillars of our bilateral relationship. Your visit to India is at a time when India and US are closer than ever before. In spite of various emerging geopolitical challenges, we need to keep our focus on the important and long-term issues.
The two largest democracies have held 2+2 meetings annually since 2018. Earlier, Secretary of State and Defense Secretary of the US received a warm welcome upon reaching New Delhi. Ahead of the summit, the leaders of the two countries outlined the agenda for this year's annual meet.
This meeting, this visit of yours, I think has a particular significance because we need to follow up on the Prime Minister's June visit and the President's coming here in September. So there's a lot of bilateral stuff we need to do. And two, of course, this is the 2+2, so we take a broader view of what we're doing. And then, of course, as Quad members, there's the Indo-Pacific that we're focusing on. And finally, we look at global regional issues, and I think what's happening in West Asia, Middle East, to you folks. That, I think, is a very big concern right now. I look forward to discussing those and other matters.
It's always wonderful to be in India. We're building on a rather remarkable year of engagement, and I think it's just evidence of the fact that we have not only the strongest bilateral partnership we've ever had, but also a regional one and indeed a global one. And that was further evidenced by India's leadership of the G20 this year. And as Jai said, we have a lot to do, including with our defense colleagues, so I'm very much looking forward to that. And I think it's further evidence of our resolute focus from the United States on the Indo-Pacific, our region for the future. And the future is actually now, and we're building it now, and we're building it together with India.
Meanwhile, the Defence Minister of India and the US Defence Secretary highlighted the importance of partnership between the two nations for ensuring a free, open and rules-bound Indo-Pacific and a stable world.
The India-US defense relationship has evolved into a strategic partnership characterized by mutual trust, shared values and a growing recognition of common interests in maintaining regional and global security. We increasingly find ourselves in agreement on strategic issues, including countering China's aggression, promoting a free and open Indo-Pacific, and addressing regional security challenges.
The strength of our partnership is rooted in the people-to-people ties that are the heart of our long-standing friendship. Together, our diplomats, entrepreneurs, and students are expanding our partnership in new domains, including clean energy, artificial intelligence, and semiconductors. Our increasingly strong ties give us all hope for the future of this partnership and for our common efforts toward a more secure world.
Ahead of the meeting, a statement by the US State Department said, United States-India relationship is one of the most strategic and consequential of the 21st century, highlighting the role the two countries can play in ensuring a stable and prosperous world.
The 2+2 ministerial level dialogues between the United States of America and India come at a time when there are tensions across the world, be it the Ukraine war that has been going on for over a year or the new conflict that has started in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas. And as the leaders of the two largest democracies sit and discuss these issues, there is finally hope that the outcome of this meeting will provide solution to the problems that threaten to destabilize the entire world. With camera person Bansi Dogra, Akshay Dongre, DD India.
Now, ahead of the Indian festival of Diwali, markets are flooded with earthen lamps and decorative items. People are opting for local products, lending a local flavor to the festivities and giving a new boost to the economy as well. DD India's Abhishek Mahajan has a report.
Crowded streets, people throng shops to buy lamps, candles, decorative lights. Time to deck up your home. It's Diwali time, India's biggest festival, the Festival of Light. For Prakash Chandra, his spot on the streets, Bhagirath Palace, a local market near iconic Lal Killa, is sacred. Despite comparatively cheaper wholesale price of Chinese products, he chooses to sell Indian-made products on Diwali.
People are going for locally made products more than the Chinese ones. They ask for Indian-made products because quality-wise they are better, and people now are more vocal towards local products.
Not only him, majority of the vendors choose the same path.
People are specifically asking for Indian products, which are made in the country. All these are handmade and locally made.
Awareness for locally made products is real. People in the national capital are opting for handmade, made in India products.
I have always been fond of Indian-made products, and because of us, these people will also be able to celebrate Diwali. I urge people to buy Indian products.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in the latest episode of Mann Ki Baat, once again pushed for local products amid the festive season. He also posted a video on X and shared a link on which people can post selfies with such products or their makers on the Namo application.
I will buy the Indian products and post the selfie on that Namo app. I will take that initiative definitely.
हमारे त्योहारों में हमारी प्राथमिकता हो वोकल फॉर लोकल और हम मिलकर उस सपने को पूरा करें. हमारा सपना है आत्मनिर्भर भारत.
One small step taken by all of us can bring along a big difference. This Diwali, spread light of happiness and be the reason of someone's smile. With cameraman Sharda, this is Abhishek Mahajan in Delhi for DD India.
And now in DD India News Hour, let's take a look at other stories making news. The air quality across India's national capital continues to be in the poor category, reports from the Central Pollution Control Board. Now, the AQI stood at 250 on Saturday morning, though the quality of air in the region has improved marginally after rains on Friday, but continues to be in an unhealthy category. According to India's central bank, the country's forex reserve increased to a 7-week high mark. The forex reserve surged by $4.672 billion to $590.783 billion for the week ending the 3rd of November. The overall value of the gold held was up by 200 millions at $46.123 billion. The country's special drawing rights also increased by 64 million to $17.975 billion. Ahead of Diwali festival, city Ayodhya in Indian state of Uttar Pradesh is all set to hold a grand Deepotsav, or the Festival of Lights, on Saturday. This year, 24 lakh diyas will be lit up at 51 ghats or embankments along the Saryu River to celebrate the festival. Also, the other parts of the city are being decorated with different types of flowers for the Deepotsav festival. The micro, small and medium enterprises, or the MSME sector of India, has achieved a significant milestone by generating over 150 million employment opportunities. The Udyam portal played an important role in facilitating this achievement with the registration of over 30 million MSME units on the portal. In more international news, credit ratings agency Moody's on Friday lowered its outlook on the U.S. credit ratings to negative from stable, citing large fiscal deficits and a decline in debt affordability. Moody's affirmed the long-term issuer and senior unsecured ratings at AAA. Top Biden administration officials criticized the rating agency shift to negative outlook, calling the change a yet another consequence of congressional Republican extremism and dysfunction. Moody's is the last of three major rating agencies to maintain a top rating for the U.S. government. Fitch changed its rating from AAA to AA+ in the month of August, joining S&P, which has had a AA+ rating since 2011. Wall Street's main indices ended with big gains on Friday, boosted by heavyweight tech and growth stocks as Treasury yields calmed, while investors looked ahead to next week's report on inflation and other economic data. The tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite posted its biggest one-day percentage rise since May 26th. Equities bounced back from declines the previous session that followed hawkish comments from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell about interest rates. Thursday's drop ended the longest winning streak in 2 years for the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq. Investors have been focused on benchmark Treasury yields that have eased somewhat from 16 years high and monetary policy as they assess whether the Fed might be done raising rates to control inflation and when the central bank could actually start cutting rates. The Grammy Awards releases its 2024 nominations list, and turns out it will be a women's world at this season's Grammys, with SZA scooping the most chances for gold on music's biggest night with 9 nominations, as pop superstars including Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish dominated across the categories. Taylor Swift dominated this year with her sold-out concert tour spectacular, The Eras Tour movie, whereas singers like Billie Eilish, Sulana Imani have also been nominated on their greatest contribution to the music industry. The winners to be announced at the awards ceremony on the 4th of February next year. You're watching DD India News Hour, and time to get you all the sporting action. Well, in a major setback to Sri Lankan cricket, the cricket governing body, International Cricket Council, has suspended Sri Lanka cricket's membership with immediate effect. The ICC board met on Friday and determined the Sri Lanka cricket in a serious breach of its obligation as a member, in particular the requirement to manage its affair autonomously and ensure that there is no government interference in the governance, regulation and/or administration of cricket in Sri Lanka. The conditions of the suspension will be decided by the ICC board in due course. Earlier, the Sri Lanka government had sacked the SLC following the team's disastrous show at the World Cup, where it lost 7 out of 9 matches. Sri Lanka Cricket Board was reinstated by the Court of Appeal, thus further deepening the crisis in the country's cricket governing body. And now to discuss more on this, I'm joined by Dr. Ahmed Moeen Faruqi. Good morning, Mr. Faruqi. Thank you so much for joining us. And first of all, Diwali greetings to you. Now, looking at the fresh development, we also know that 21st of November will be the day when a meeting will be held on this topic. But as of now, how do you assess this grave situation for the Sri Lankan Cricket Board?
Good morning, Deepika, and happy Diwali to you and the entire team back in Delhi as well. Yes, to begin with, yes, the condition as of now for Sri Lankan cricket is dismal. There had been allegations of corruption right from the last 1.5 years. But, you know, the decision of the sports minister to suspend the Sri Lankan Cricket Board and thereafter the interference by the other bodies, including the parliament itself, that has always raised a kind of a question mark over the kind of freedom of operations by the board as such. Of course, the Court of Appeal has reinstated the Sri Lankan Cricket Board for a period of 2 weeks by putting a stay on the Gazette in which the original suspension was issued by the sports minister. But the current situation is like, you know, more so it will serve as a grace period and, you know, a kind of a warning for the Sri Lankan cricket as well as the government to set the house in order primarily before the 21st November when the ICC board meets on their usual the usual quarter meeting. So right now, Sri Lankan cricket, it's still being considered as the governing body of the island nation, but considering the suspension, as of now, there are no direct immediate implications on the cricketing action in the island. There are no games as such scheduled till January, February, when the Under-19 World Cup would be hosted. So till that time, there's no games which are scheduled. So the next, whatever the decision that has to be taken will be taken on the 21st of November. But till that time, the government as well as the board will have to have a rethink with regard to the strategy that they want to adopt. Till that, it's still a wait and watch.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Faruqi, for joining us and bringing us the latest on the current crisis of the Sri Lanka cricket board. Moving on, Australia now will be looking forward to maintain their momentum ahead of the knockout stages as they tackle Bangladesh side, which is already out of the race for the semi-finals. Australia have now won 6 matches on the trot at the Cricket World Cup and will be very much keen to make it 7 in a row prior to a cutthroat semi-final scheduled against South Africa. Openers David Warner and Travis Head missed out against Afghanistan in the last match, but they will be keen for a big score, while informed spinner Adam Zampa has the lure of becoming the leading wicket taker at the tournament if they can register another big haul. While out of contention for a semi-final berth, Bangladesh can move closer to ensuring a qualification place for the ICC Champions Trophy with a victory here. Their task will not be easy, though, with inspirational skipper Shakib Al Hasan sidelined with a finger injury, and the likes of stand-in skipper Najmul Hossain Shanto will need to step up in his absence. Now, till the last reports came in, Bangladesh were at 24 for a loss of 0 wicket. Earlier, Australia won the toss and elected to bowl. Moving on, celebrations are continuing across the world to mark the festival of Diwali. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, a practicing Hindu, hosted a reception at Downing Street. Elsewhere in the country, there are hundreds of events taking place. DD India were invited along to the Diwali celebrations at the University of Bristol, which is home to hundreds of Indian students. DD India correspondent John Beaver reports from Bristol, United Kingdom.
They may be 7,000 kilometres from home, but for hundreds of Indian students, Diwali is a chance to celebrate their shared culture. This event has grown significantly in recent years and is one of many organised by the University of Bristol's Indian Society.
It's not just Diwali, but it's every Indian festival here. The thing is, when you're in India, you don't know the importance of your culture, but when you travel so far, you get to know how important it is to stick to your roots and remember the good memories. You start missing your family, and this is one way to create a family here.
For some here, this is less a taste of home and more a chance to learn about the culture and traditions of an increasingly sizable student group.
It's wonderful to have more and more Indian students now. Say they're the biggest group of overseas students to the UK now. They've just overtaken China. And many want to stay and work here, which is wonderful because that then enriches our work communities, enriches our workplaces.
Like all good Diwali celebrations, food played an important part, as well as other traditional activities.
From the Prime Minister downwards, Diwali celebrations are taking place across the UK. And with almost 2 million people here who say they're of Indian heritage, it's no surprise that there are so many celebrations.
The University of Bristol has a well-respected Bollywood dance society, and what better time to perform than at the Diwali celebrations.
You not only connect with people who are from home with you, but it's like people that want to learn about you. And I never feel bad telling someone about my culture, telling someone where I'm from.
I find a sense of community here, and it's always nice to just be a part of stuff because it feels like home.
The celebration of this ancient tradition ended in a more modern way, as the latest generation of Indians in the UK came together to mark Diwali and make new friends a long way from home. John Beaver in Bristol, reporting for DD India.
And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Deepika Mehto, and from all of us here in Delhi, wishing you and your family a very happy Festival of Lights, a very happy Diwali.